It is 1 minute past 2, so time to get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Andrew Carter. I'm the Chief Executive of the Centre for Cities. Welcome to this Metro Mayor hustings, focusing on the Greater Manchester economy, its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. Today's event is part of a series of hustings we're running with areas that are electing Metro Mayors in May. And I'd like to thank the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce and the Institution of Civil Engineers for partnering with us to put on today's event. We have 4 candidates with us today, ready to make their pitch and to answer your questions. The candidates are Nick Buckley from the Reform UK, Andy Burnham from the Labour Party, Simon Lepori from Liberal Democrats, and Michael Welton, who's representing Melanie Horrocks from the Green Party. Those are our 4 candidates with us today. Let me just say a few words about how the event will run so you get a handle on it. During the session, please keep your microphones on mute unless you are called by me to ask a question. In a moment, I'm going to invite each candidate to make their opening statement of up to 2 minutes and no more on their priorities for supporting the Greater Manchester economy. The order was randomly determined. I'll be timing these, and each candidate will get a 20-second warning by me raising my hand that they are nearly out of time. And then we will move to questions. We've had loads of questions submitted beforehand, so I will say your name, so get ready to unmute and then ask your question. We'll take one question at a time and give each candidate a chance to answer it. We've had loads, so we definitely won't get through all of them, but we'll get through as many as we can. And we will be done and dusted no later than 3:30. And the final point, I think, is to say that the event is being recorded and will be made available after the event on our website, centreforcities.org. So without further ado, let me just say that the order for the opening 2 minutes is first Nick, then Andy, then Simon, then Michael. So Nick, if you're nearly ready, everything is sorted and you're off mute. Just click yourself off mute. There we go. Are you ready, Nick?
Yeah, well, yes.
Okay, lovely. Your 2 minutes starts now. Go for it.
Thank you. So, Manchester City Centre. I am a city centre person. I was born 100 yards away from Manchester City Centre in Hume. I grew up roughly a mile away from the city centre. The city centre was my playground. I also worked for Manchester Council, and for 2 of those years, I was responsible for Manchester City Centre in terms of reducing crime and antisocial behaviour. And now, for the last decade, I've lived in the city centre. I understand Manchester City Centre. We need to get businesses open. That will be everybody's priority after a year of COVID. We need to bend over backwards to help businesses. We need to bend the rules. We need to change the rules to make sure businesses can open and can thrive, because jobs depend on it. We also need, as a city centre, look at crime and antisocial behaviour. It's one of the things people tell me why they don't come into the city centre, why they don't use transport to come into the city centre. How can we attract people in when they're afraid to come into the city centre? In Piccadilly Gardens yesterday, a woman got slashed with a broken bottle. Piccadilly Gardens is horrendous. It's a place I would never recommend anybody to go. The city centre is a powerhouse, but we need to look at Greater Manchester and work out, how does the city centre benefit the rest of the region? It's great that city centre grows and brings in so much money, but we need it to benefit everybody else in Greater Manchester, and again, for the whole of the region and the whole of the north of England. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Nick. Okay, so Andy, you're up next. If you'll unmute, I will click the stopwatch. Yep, you're all good to go.
Ready? Thanks, Andrew. Thanks to the Centre for Cities for putting this event on. Over the last 4 years, I have shown how the devolution of power to Greater Manchester can make a real difference. First, to giving the North a stronger voice, but secondly, to changing people's lives for the better. Back then, we were facing a growing rough sleeping crisis with rising numbers of people on our streets. I said I would turn it around, and we have done by mobilising a major response across the city region. I'm building a bed every night, our groundbreaking scheme that looks after over 500 people every night, including tonight. I brought in free bus travel for 16 to 18s and created a new UCAS style system for apprenticeships. And I said I would set the goal of us becoming the UK's leading digital city region and the UK's leading green city region. Today, we are the fastest growing digital and tech hub in Europe. That is an amazing thing for me to be able to say to you. And we have the most ambitious plans for a zero carbon city region by 2038. What will I do if re-elected? I will make transport the top priority. It's the biggest thing holding us back. I have already created a scheme to bring buses back under public control in Greater Manchester for the first time in 35 years. By 2025, we will introduce a London-style public transport system over bus and tram, with a cap on what people can spend in any given day, no matter how many buses and trams they take. So in the next phase of devolution, Greater Manchester needs an experienced leader with a track record of delivery and a vision people can buy into. I offer all of those things, and that's why I ask for your support on the 6th of May. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Very good. Comfortably within your 2 minutes, the pair of you. So we're going well. That means more time for questions. So third up, Simon from the Liberal Democrats. Simon, over to you. Let me know when you're on mute and you're ready to go, and I will click the stopwatch. Okay,
Thank you
go
very
for
much.
it. Good.
So my name's Simon Lepori, and I'm the candidate for the Liberal Democrats. And I just want to say that I've lived in Greater Manchester and Stretford for the past 15 years. It's a brilliant city region, full of vibrancy and innovation, and something we can all be proud of, and we should all be proud of. You know, we're looking out to the world and saying, this is Manchester. This is where we are, and we do things differently here. So how do we see Greater Manchester over the next 4 years, 8 years, 12 years? We are going to grow. We are going to need those homes that we're going to talk about later. We are going to need a joined up transport system that we're going to talk about through today. We are going to have to get a grip of air pollution and our green infrastructure across Greater Manchester. We need to encourage the active 15-minute neighbourhood. We need to enable people to move across this city without getting in a car. Because we can all say, why are you forcing people out of cars? Or we can all say, we want a greener lifestyle that improves our health, improves our minds, and improves our city region as a whole. And that's something that I've been talking about over the past few weeks and months, along with other candidates that are here today. And I look forward to all your questions over the next hour and a half. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Simon. And last but not least, Michael, on behalf of the Green Party, when you're ready.
Thank you very much. First, my apologies for not being Melanie. She would have loved to have been here if she could, and I'll try and be a decent second best. The great thing about the mayoral elections is you get 2 votes. So you can actually vote for the candidate you prefer with your first vote and still have your second vote to use tactically, so that everyone who thinks green can actually vote green without hesitation. We're really lucky to have a candidate like Mel. She's passionate about the issues you'd expect from a Green Party candidate, but she also has relevant experience of policing and crime as a senior lawyer at the Independent Police Complaints Commission. And she now works as a data protection expert while studying for a PhD in counterterrorism. What a great CV for a GM mayor. Now, we want to thank the Centre for Cities for publishing their 3 policy priorities around housing, transport and skills. And it's particularly refreshing to see a direct link made between charging for car use and investment in public transport. The Green Party's long advocated road pricing as a tool to rebalance the perverse incentives that continue to make car use cheaper than public transport. But what we want for Greater Manchester's economy is good growth. We want greater productivity and higher incomes, but not at the expense of people's happiness and not at the expense of our planet. The changes created by the pandemic have shown us the way on some of this. Manchester Airport has gone from being the dirty jewel in our crown to being a major burden on the finances of GMCA councils. Green funds have outpaced traditional carbon-based investments, and the massive spending on furlough has brought us closer to a form of universal basic income than we ever imagined when the Green Party was being laughed at for adopting it as a policy. As mayor, Mel will attract investment by promoting Greater Manchester as a low-carbon hub, supporting sectors and industries that are willing to make the low-carbon transition, and support our tradespeople to retrain with the skills required in the zero carbon building sector. We would also enshrine the principle of 15-minute neighbourhoods at the heart of everything the GMCA does as the best way to spread wealth among our communities, whilst ensuring that we are connected by a transport network that values people and places over the convenience of cars, and a digital infrastructure that is both outstanding and inclusive at the same time. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Michael, and to candidates for their opening comments. Let's turn to questions now. The first question is going to come from Clive Memmott. Clive will be known to many of you. He's the Chief Executive of Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. Clive, unmute and ask your question, please.
Hi, hello, Andrew. Thanks very much. And hello, Nick, Simon, Michael and Andy. I asked you what I hope will be a very precise question, and that is, how vital is devolution in the delivery of the government's levelling up agenda? And then secondly, and how well do you think Greater Manchester has used its devolved powers so far? Thank you.
Very good question, Clive. So two parts to that question. Michael, kick us off. So how vital is devolution to the delivery of the government's levelling up agenda, and how well has GM used its devolved powers so far? Michael.
Devolution is absolutely vital. If we don't have the powers, and we don't have the budget, or we don't have the money, we can't, we can't invest locally. We can't make the choices that we know are right for our city and our city region. So, so we have to have that, otherwise, what is the Greater Manchester Mayor, but just a figurehead. I mean, I think we can see this certainly in the way that the pandemic has run, contact tracing, for example, when it's been done at a national level, it's been clunky, it's been expensive, it's been a bit of a disaster. When we've, trusted our NHS and our local, our local services to contact trace or to vaccinate, then it's been done really, really well. The skills are held locally, the knowledge is held locally. We have to trust our local councils to do the job that they've been elected to do, and that means bringing the money down to this level. And certainly, I think the GMCA has done a reasonable job so far. Certainly, they've brought in a lot of money in various sectors, particularly for transport. The B network is fantastic, but we need more than that, more of that. We need to be in the running for every single bit of money that is going, particularly for whether it's a gigafactory or whether it's something for rewilding or for planting more forests and that kind of thing. We have to be in it to win it.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Mike. Simon, so importance of devolution to levelling up, and how is how has GM done so far with the powers that it's got?
No, well, devolution is incredibly important to levelling up, and it's how we use it. And I think we've seen that over the past 20 years with Scotland and Wales. When it's been used effectively, it actually empowers more local decisions, and local people have buy-in to where they live. And that would be my only criticism, really, of how well the powers have been used. People know they've got an elected mayor, but the elected mayor still appears to be distant, and the decisions made aren't often understood. So you speak to a lot of people, and they're talking about policing and crime because that's what's in the news. They're talking about the bus franchising, that's what's in the news. They don't know how to connect them all up yet, and I think that's a job for the combined authority to actually do. And I think over many years, local government and now devolved government has not necessarily failed, but it's not been a priority to educate the people who live in the area of what their government does or what their local governance does. I've often been a proponent and a fan of politics in schools and civic education in schools about how governance works and why you pay taxes here and there and how it all joins together, because a lot of people just don't understand it. Yeah. And that's what keeps us distant from one another.
Okay, very good. Andy, devolution importance to levelling up, and then how have you got on with the powers that you've had so far?
Yeah, so two really important questions, Clive. So firstly, on how important, you used the word vital, I think it is the right word. You can't level up this country top down from Whitehall. That is the system of government that we've had throughout all of our lives, and it's left us a country with major regional inequalities, a huge north-south divide. I was in a government that often tried to level up top down, so I can speak from experience. It didn't work then, it won't work now. You will make change if you vest areas with the powers that they need to make change happen for themselves. And I think the great thing about devolution, Clive, is that by bringing power closer to people, you can involve more people in the use of that power in the way that we involved you in the design of the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. That is a better way of making change happen. It also makes it about place rather than party. And that too, I think, is a positive unifying force that makes devolution the right thing for our times. How well used so far? Well, I can point to the speeding up of infrastructure delivery, the Metrolink extension to the Trafford Centre ahead of schedule, on budget. That doesn't always happen with Network Rail projects, as we know. I can point to the DWP devolution that we have that has had twice the success rate in getting people longest out of the labour market back into work by taking a more personalised approach. I can point to improvements in social care because of NHS devolution. But I'll finish, Clive, on the big point, which is the priority that, as you know, I'm setting. It allows us to create a vision that works for us at a place level. So the vision for transport, the London-style system, is only something that can be built from here upwards rather than imposed on us. So I am going to use the powers, well, I have already used them, to bring buses back under public control. And that allows us to create a single ticketing system across the whole network, to create a coherent public transport system that I think will take us up to the next level. So it's work in progress, is the honest answer. We are using the powers, but I think we've done a lot of the thinking. We're now ready to go much further and much faster in the second mayoral term, and that's what I'm absolutely geared up to do.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Andy. And Nick, your thoughts on the importance of devolution and then how well GM has wielded the powers it's got currently?
Yes, it's extremely important that we get power and decisions as close to the people as possible. Hence why we have metro mayors. For a long time, and we still do this now in certain areas, one size fits all, and it doesn't work. Hence why there's a north-south divide and why there's a divide between different areas of Greater Manchester and the north in general. So we need to move these powers and these decisions to the people. One of the issues I have, and which people talk to me about, is different powers different mayors have. And this confuses ordinary citizens. Why can't our mayor do this? Because it happens in London. And the answer is they have different powers. So we do need to look in the future at bringing more powers to Greater Manchester and making sure mayors can be judged on the same, a level playing field, because sometimes it is unfair. Powers we have at the moment, are we use them to the best of our ability? That's a party political choice. There's lots of things I would do differently than our current mayor, and I'm sure he'll be doing lots of things differently than what I would do. But as long as we're involving the general public and the voters and saying, this is what we want, this is our vision, just like we're doing at this husting now, and this is what you need to vote on or vote against. Bring people into this so they can make the decision, because we still have a lot of, we're going to do this to you, and we need to get away from that and start having conversations and deliver what people want, not what we want to deliver to them.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Nick. So let's move to question 2, which picks up on some of the things that you've said already. And that's from Emma Antrobus, who's the Northwest Director for the Institution of Civil Engineers. Emma, if you're on the call, unmute.
Yes. Good afternoon, Andrew, and everybody else who's already spoken. I think Clive's question cut across a little bit of my question, but in terms of building on what Nick said and the others, what powers would you like to see developed for Greater Manchester, really to drive forward that levelling up agenda, to get that economic development that can actually be delivered sustainably but meets the needs of residents and businesses and those very, very challenging carbon targets.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Emma. So you've all hinted at that you would use the powers you've got, but you've also hinted at that you would want more powers to go further on the various things that are in your agenda. So what particularly will you be going to government to ask for? Andy, let's start with you. What additional powers do you want to get from government?
Okay, thanks, Emma. So I'm going to talk about two, which I think will be two elements that would really fill in the Greater Manchester jigsaw. One is going back to Department of Work and Pensions. That money that is spent in our city region could be spent so much better if much of it was through our local organisations, our local voluntary sector. We spend billions of pounds on housing benefit, and yet many of our residents are in homes that don't meet the decent standard. We could just make so much more of that money with a bottom-up, personalised approach to support, and actually building on what Michael said, keeping more of that wealth that comes from that budget within our own communities, within our own community organisations. That is something that could really make a difference for spending no more public money. Get rid of the tick box, top-down, computer says no approach of the DWP and go into an empowering bottom-up approach. We could do so much more with it. The second, and possibly even more important, is skills. You cannot run a local skills system from Whitehall. Well, we've tried to do it, haven't we, for as long again as we can remember. And that has led to a complete lack of parity between people on the university route and those looking for technical qualifications. This is really critical now. If you take something like retrofitting of domestic properties, which we're going to have to do, and commercial and other properties, we have to work now with our colleges to build the skills capability within them to develop the green retrofitting skills, the passive house construction skills. It has to be carefully worked out across a system. And the longer we don't devolve skills policy, the more we'll be setting back the change that needs to come with regard to something like that. So it's just an example, Emma. We need, in my view, a local industrial strategy supported by a local skills strategy. And that is something actually I would put at the very top of the tree.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Andy, Nick, what's on your list for the first things that you want government to give you more power over?
Easy for me, education. I've worked in the education sector for decades. I know it fails a significant but small percentage of young people who go through our schooling system, again, paid for by the tax funder. There's reports out there that 1 in 5 pupils in England are failed by our education system. Why? I've said it before, one size fits all. It's okay having the jobs in Greater Manchester and looking for skills in Greater Manchester, but until we address our failing education system that fails 20% of young people, then nothing really will change. Those people will not get the opportunities we're trying to pull into Greater Manchester. I want to see choice, bigger choice in schools. I want to see new types of schools, secondary schools, that are based around technical education, not dumping grounds for young people who are problematic, but schools where parents and young people go, I don't want to go to the normal route and look at university and spend all my time looking at GCSEs. I want to learn how to be an entrepreneur. I want to work in hotels. I want to do coding. And we have different secondary schools that young people actually want to go to. And it's not about sat down in the class facing a teacher all day. And they can come out of there with some GCSEs in English and maths, but with the aspiration, the drive, the confidence to contribute to society, instead of leaving after 5 years and being angry and violent at society because we've tortured them for 5 years, because we've made them feel stupid. Until we get our education right for children, nothing will really change for us addressing poverty and aspiration.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed, Nick. Simon, additional powers you want government to give you if you were the mayor?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, the additional powers, I think we're all touching on it. I think we all know that education and skills are a key issue that need to be devolved further. You don't necessarily have to have the entire education department devolved down to Greater Manchester, but curriculum decisions can be devolved to Greater Manchester. And then you work with head teachers and with teachers and with educators across Greater Manchester to actually build a curriculum that fits with the business and development priorities of Greater Manchester. So we get more kids coming out of school with the skills that business needs them to have. So that would be a workaround. That would be a direct power that you could ask for. Another power, and I think at the moment for me, it's the public health budget. At the moment, local councils have control over public health. We have a public health director over Greater Manchester with no money or no powers, is my understanding, because the money's at local council. I would move that up to Greater Manchester level to allow focused, targeted public health into areas where we actually need it, because we have those areas of deprivation and those areas of mistrust of services that need the extra support. And we all know a healthier society is a better society for working and learning and growing. And we do have to get a grip on that in Greater Manchester with the disparities we have across the region.
Great, thank you very much, Simon. And Michael, what would be on your list?
I'd really like to see us having to go less to central government with the begging bowl regarding specific schemes. There's an awful lot of grants that are handed out, and I think developing on what Andy was saying, there's a lot of grants that are handed out by central government, and we do have to jump through an awful lot of hoops to get there. There's a lot of time and effort put into applying for these things. Whereas it would be much better if we saw the money devolved in the first instance to, for example, maybe a Greater Manchester Investment Agency, so that we can make the decisions. The money can be here, and we can make the decisions about that money, rather than always having to jump through all the hoops to get the money from central government in the first place. And I'd really like to see something like a local, a Greater Manchester Green Bank, so that we can, or investment agencies, so that we can invest in the low carbon transformation that we really need locally.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed. We've got several questions on, or several questions have been submitted on skills. We'll come back to that a little bit later on. But I want to turn now and get a question from Helen Palmer. So Helen, if you're on the call still, unmute and ask your question, which is about how we support businesses as we come out of the lockdown period. Helen, over to you.
Thanks, Andrew, and hello to all the candidates. So this is my question. As culture, heritage, live events, tourism and hospitality are such important sectors within Greater Manchester and have been so hard hit by the pandemic, how will the candidates look to support job creation, skills development and investment for those sectors to ensure their resilience and growth? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a great question. It's those sort of industries and activities that make places like Greater Manchester the places that they are, and they've been hammered in through the pandemic for the reasons that we know. Simon, you kick us off. What's your thinking on how we support those kind of industries as we emerge from the lockdown?
Well, to be fair, it's in your briefing paper. It's that Manchester is open campaign. And that's something we have to push and we have to broadcast to the world. We're open, we're ready, we want you to visit us, we want you to see us. We want the people that already live here to come out and enjoy the things that they used to always enjoy before the pandemic. It's not going to be easy. And anyone that says, oh, it's going to be nice and easy, we'll open everything up and it'll all go back to normal, is lying. It will be hard. It's going to be 2 years, 18 months, 2 years for a lot of these businesses to actually recover. So what can we do for them over the next 2 years? We should be lobbying government for that support over the next 2 years. So special short-term business grants and business loans to actually aid them over the next 2 years as they regrow their business. I mean, I was out last week when the pubs opened, and I got to meet some friends for the first time in 8 months, and it was wonderful to see that so many people had come out. Greater Manchester is ready to support the hospitality industry, the cultural sector of Greater Manchester. we just know it's going to take that little extra time. I would say you could actually put in place maybe some public transport discounts, for instance. So on a Saturday or a Friday or even a Thursday night, drop the prices on Metrolink to get people in and out cheaply, to encourage people to move about the city region and go to those new concerts and those bars that are reopening and restaurants. That's something that probably could be looked at directly. But yeah, I think there's so much we could do, but Manchester is open is the banner, and I agree with that. It was in the briefing paper I got sent from you, and that's something we should all sign up to.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Michael, how do we support those industries that have been most hit as we emerge? What would you be doing as mayor?
Well, as I have recently retired from a 23-year career as a musician, so and as a touring musician as well. So I've been quite lucky that whilst a lot of my friends who are still in the game, as we say, have had their careers effectively terminated for a year, I've been fortunate that that hasn't affected me. But I totally understand the issues that they're facing, and it's not just the pandemic, but it's also the consequences of Brexit as well. Because for example, as a musical hub, Manchester, has always exported a lot of musicians and a lot of acts abroad, and we're facing incredibly challenging times to try and actually get that on the road again. In terms of our restaurants and our cafes and our entertainment businesses and that kind of thing, I think there are some positives to take out of the pandemic. I mean, we're seeing streets being repurposed for entertainments rather than just for car transportation. And we see, in the Manchester city centre, we're seeing the northern quarter transformed. Hopefully, that's going to extend to Deansgate when it's fully pedestrianised. And my family business is my wife's family business is Forsyth's Music Shop on Deansgate, and we've been there since 1857, and we can't wait to see Deansgate fully pedestrianised, because we can imagine all those pubs and all those restaurants with tables across the street, that European style boulevard culture, which will really, really help all the other businesses like us. If you get the footfall, we'll make a lot more money from people going to businesses like that as a music shop than we will with people driving through traffic, going through in a car, not stopping. So that's brilliant. But also, we don't want to lose the positive effects that it's had on some aspects of the entertainment businesses, outside of Manchester. So you're seeing coffee caravans pop up here and there. You're seeing a lot of innovation, and that's where the kind of the 15-minute neighborhood comes in. Is that the places where we live outside of Manchester, some of them have kind of burst into life a bit. So we get that and balance that with regenerating the city centre. That would be a nice balance.
Fantastic. Okay, very good. Nick, how will we support these industries? How would you do it?
The first thing we do is we get out of their way. That's what businesses tell me all the time. If you want me to be successful, get government out of my way, because they only hinder what I want to do. We need to open businesses, all businesses, ASAP. We also need to say no to vaccine passports, because that's going to hit the hospitality industry. Get out of their way and let them do what they do best, which is run their business. I like some of the points already raised. I live in the city centre. Some of the streets have been blocked off to support bars, to put tables and chairs outside. Fantastic. All the councils need to be looking at this and saying, what can we do to support you? Bend over backwards to help all these industries, because most of them are on the verge of bankruptcy. So what can we do? It's going to be really difficult over the next year. More jobs are going, more businesses will go under. And it's nice to see people coming out at the moment, buying a pint, having something to eat. But this will all die down a little bit over the coming months, and it's all dependent on the weather. But again, all I want to reiterate is get business out of the way of business. Sorry, get government out of the way of businesses and let them do what they do best.
Okay, very good. Andy, in a second term, how do you support in those sort of urban entertainment industries that we know have been really struggling through the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I think they're going to need help. So I'm not sure government can get out of the way. They're going to need us to be there for them, to be honest. It's kind of hard to follow Michael, because that is proper Manchester music heritage Forsyths, isn't it? I don't think any of us can top that. So I think we're all on the back foot here after that, Michael. I do like what you say though about pedestrianising the city centre. We've just signed off a city centre transport strategy, Salford City Council, Manchester City Council, TFGM, which is about making it a much more attractive, livable environment. So that is very much in the thinking, alongside the modern transport system that I spoke about before. To answer your question specifically though, Helen, what have I done? Well, I appointed a nighttime economy advisor, which was a big statement actually of how much I understand all of the industries that you reeled off, how they are the lifeblood of not just our city centre, actually of our city region. And Sasha Lord has been an incredibly important voice for our hospitality and nighttime economy over the last year. And I think that sector is louder and stronger because of what he has done to galvanise them. And we have actually challenged some of the thinking around the roadmap. As I understand, it's places with strong ventilation systems that are the safer places. I think this arbitrary thing about shops or pubs, I'm not sure we've got this right. And obviously Sasha has tested that with my backing, because we back this industry and we want them to come back strong. We also allowed the culture budget to be spent, the GM culture budget. It went out early to all of our organisations last year, recognising that they were going to have real challenges, and we overinvest in culture. Some people criticise us for it, but I'm going to defend it, because those organisations like the Royal Exchange, Bolton, Octagon, Bury, Met, you could reel them all off, we all know them. They add so much to our city region. I have brought in a town of culture initiative to make sure this is more than the city centre. So Bury were going to be our first town of culture, but they will be Greater Manchester's first town of culture this year, 2021. And of course, marketing Manchester are crucial, aren't they, in terms of bringing back the tourists. And we are supporting them with a budget. One last thing I would say, just one last observation, and I think Simon touched on it, I think. I would say later running public transport is something that would massively support all of the sectors that you mentioned, Helen. I am a veteran of missing the Encore because I'm running out of Gorilla up towards Oxford Road or out of the Deaf Institute. If you live where I do, Wigan Borough, you cannot get home if you stay beyond 11 o'clock by train. We have funded later running of the trams. We did that last year just to see if people would use it, and they did. And I think as we reform public transport, we need later running buses, later running trams and trains. And I think that would hugely support culture, live events, tourism and hospitality, which are critical to Greater Manchester. And I hope you feel we have spoken up for all of those sectors over the last 12 months.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. So let's move on to question now from Charlotte Morris. Charlotte, if you're there, it's looking at a slightly different aspect of the city region economy. Charlotte, are you there?
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Hello.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and hello everyone. My question is quite a simple one. What role do the candidates see for the universities of Greater Manchester in their economic vision for our city region?
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. Let's go to Nick. Nick, what is the role of universities? What role do they play in your vision for the city region?
I've worked with probably all the universities in Greater Manchester. I've taken young people there for aspiration days so they can see what's going on. But universities bring so much to the region of Greater Manchester. They bring the student pound, which is really important. And then the universities themselves are looking at that technology side of things. The Graphene Institute will something that's going to change the whole world over the next few decades. So we need to invest in the universities. Universities, from my understanding, also have a lot of money themselves, and they're investing in this. They do link up with businesses, and we need to continue that, and we need to support the universities to look into the future. What do we need going forward? Because everything takes time and takes decades to put that into a stream to get that out. So having the input of the major universities into the mayor's office, I feel would be really, really important, because I don't know everything. My team won't know everything. And we need experts to say, you need to be aware of this, and we need to start making changes today, because this will come along in a decade, in 2 decades time. So I would be open for those conversations.
Okay, very good. Andy, universities, obviously you've got several and they're significant? What kind of role do they play in your vision for the city region economy?
Yeah, they're huge, Andrew, and thanks, Charlotte, for the question, because it deserves its own focus. This point, I'm actually surprised at how much I've lent on all 5 of the universities over the last 4 years for all kinds of support, and I honestly believe that devolution can really empower universities, can't it? Because it can bring kind of research close to where it can make a difference as well. And, you know, it's such an important argument. So to give you some specific examples, I called a Green Summit in support of that ambition of being the UK's leading green city region. The Tyndall Centre at Manchester University supported us with the analysis around setting a science-led target. We are one of the few, I think possibly the only city region in the UK to have a science-led target for a zero carbon city region 2038, and it was developed for us by the University of Manchester. So that is a classic example of the change we can make. But your own university, Salford, now is pioneering a centre of excellence with regard to green construction, and that will be critical, as I said before, when it comes to retrofitting. If our colleges can tap into Salford University to get that expertise around raising their game on green construction, that is how I see it working, where you can sit on with the colleges in a network, and together we can raise the game in what we do. I should carry on here because other universities have helped as well. They'll be shouting at me if I don't. Manchester Metropolitan University with the School of Digital Arts, you know, that is a huge piece of the digital skills infrastructure that we're creating. We've collaborated on a cyber foundry, because, as we know, GCHQ's arrival in Greater Manchester creates a huge demand for those skills. And Bolton, they've been opening up medical careers, which I think is fantastic, but also motorsport and the expertise that they're developing there. And then UA92, you know, I think they've got a part to play in all of this with regard to widening access to university, but also degree apprenticeships. One thing I'm going to ask all 5 of you is to expand the offer of degree apprenticeships, because I'm kind of picking up what Nick was saying before. I think that could be a great option for a lot of our young people living at home or closer to home and taking on a degree apprenticeship without the debt that can come, obviously, from a traditional degree. So critical to our mission. They were at the heart of our industrial strategy, and I'm actually excited for where this partnership can go next.
Excellent, very good. Thank you very much, Michael.
I think
first, you see the role of universities.
I think firstly we need to acknowledge what our students have been through over the last year, and you know, the handling of them of the situation at times has not been great for them. So I think we need to say thank you for them with sticking with our institutions, you know, and being here, and we certainly need to look out for them, because if we don't get the students in here, and there are students coming to Manchester from across the world, bringing vast amounts of money into the city, you know, apart from the British students at our institutions, you know, if we don't give them a good experience, then we won't have that to fall back on. I totally agree with everything that's been said so far regarding the role of the universities. There needs to be flexibility. I mean, ideally, businesses can use the expertise of the universities, and so that their employees can train flexibly. That might be going and doing part of a course or a module or something like that. You know, the inflexibility of having to study for a year or 2 years or 3 years, you know, through a course, when you may actually be engaged in something that you only need a bit of upskilling in. You know, we need to have that flexibility, and we also need to be looking at, you know, lifelong learning, of course, and the ability of people to, when they're 30, 40, 50, to be able to just suddenly change their mind and go, right, I need to go and do something else now, or my life circumstances are such that whatever I was doing before isn't happening anymore. I need to go and get new skills. And, you know, I think there is an extent to which education is a little bit wasted on the young. I think when we're a bit older, we're a bit more confident about in our choices in life. We know where we want to go, and it's important that we have the backing, you know, that we can actually go and do that. Retraining is so important in the modern economy.
Very good, thank you very much. And Simon, if you were mayor, what would you want from, and what would you expect from the universities in the city region?
Yeah, I think we all agree that education is one of those things that empowers and releases potential for an area. It's how we keep all of those students in the city region after they've done their degrees. But specifically, it's the Green Skills Fund. So you've got the Jobs and Skills Fund. You want to earmark some of that for green skills and green development, and you want to work with colleges and universities in the city region so they can provide those degree apprenticeships and higher apprenticeships and courses that evolve over time quicker to meet those new industries and those new technologies that are going to come through thick and fast. Because I think we were actually talking about this yesterday. When you go to university and you're there for 3 years, you come out, you've trained in something that's now obsolete, because that's how quick the world's changing. And so investing in a green future and green skills, however we do that and whatever that encompasses, is something that I would want universities and colleges to lead on and actually tell me how we do it. I've got the money for you. How do we do it? Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So we've had several questions. This question I've been asked to read out on behalf of the person that submitted it. So this is a question about high streets. It's, how will you ensure that the high streets in the towns of Greater Manchester are vibrant, exciting places and do not become ghost towns full of empty buildings following the pandemic? So you've got the towns, the high streets, and empty buildings. That's the kind of components of that question. It's a very good one. Simon, kick us off.
So our town centres and our village centres and our city centres are going to have to change over the next few years. I think for many years we were all told you can't work at home, it won't work. Whereas now we know that a lot of people are saying, you know what, I want to work at home permanently. And companies won't have an excuse moving forward. They can't say, we can't do it, you can't work from home. We haven't got the technology. Well, we do, because you've done it for the past year. So mixed working, changes in working is going to be something we will see over the next few years. How does that impact our high streets? Well, actually having shared working spaces where people can come in, not necessarily into a main office in a city centre, but go into their town centre. There's a shared working space. Everyone can go there, work for half an hour, and then go back home. They can go to the coffee shop or they can do a bit of shopping before they go home. Converting a lot of those buildings as well in town centres and city centres, so people can start living in the centre to create those 15-minute neighbourhoods. Because why do you have to drive in when you can live there and work there and actually enjoy yourself there? So those are all things that we're going to have to get a grip on over the next few years, because more people have started to question, more people have started to say, why am I driving? Why am I not using a bus or a tram? Why am I going into the office when I can work from home? We're going to see social changes that are going to affect how we plan our towns and cities over the next few years.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Michael. Town centres, empty buildings, what are you going to do?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm lucky enough to be a local councillor for Altrincham, and I can see a good friend of mine in the audience, Judy Collins, who is a good friend from our local civic society, and I'm sure she'd attest to the fact that Altrincham has made a massive comeback over the last decade, and I think has become something of a flagship regionally for how we can regenerate our town centres. And that's principally because we've made the town centre attractive. It's we've got rid of a lot of the through traffic. We've transformed the market. The market has been transformed from an old school market to be a place where you can still shop. I mean, I still do my veg and meat shopping for a fraction of the price at the supermarket there, but I can also go and eat there. And people spend time. We've now got market tourism coming to Altrincham, and that has expanded across the town with lots of new startups, lots of independent businesses. Yeah, and and it starts with getting the car off the street. I mean, why do people go to the Trafford Centre? Everybody always says, oh, it's for the parking, but that's not true. People go to the Trafford Centre because when they're in the Trafford Centre, their kids can run around without any danger. They can go from shop to shop, and have a lovely time without the pollution, without the danger. They can get that bit of freedom that kids need to run around as a family, and that's what we need to bring into our town centres. So anybody who's still resistant to that, who says it's all about car parking, it's all about getting vehicles into our town centre, it's not. It's making a people-friendly experience, and so the people are in there. And if we have people in there, the businesses will come. The independent businesses will thrive. Thank you.
Okay, very good, Andy. Town centre.
That's a brilliant point about the Trafford Centre, which I'd never actually thought about before. So sometimes it's worth it at hustings, isn't it? Just saying, you know what? Yeah. Thank you. I'll think about that, Michael. I mean, so I won't kind of try and repeat everything that colleagues have said. I'll try and answer the question very directly. It is about reimagining our towns, firstly, more as residential centres. I think that is the answer to the question. The retail space, often low-grade retail space, if we're honest, isn't needed in the same quantity anymore. So what we need to do is rethink these places as pleasant places to be, as Michael, I think, and Simon was saying as well. Think about them as residential centres where we are building for public transport rather than the car, where we're building more affordable, truly affordable homes, particularly for the younger generation. Because then if you're bringing in people to live there, you are bringing in a market to sustain the small independents and the quality food and drink offer that may well follow, and that is what I would propose. And just so you don't feel this is sort of pie in the sky, we have it underway. I mean, Altringham's been mentioned, Ramsbottom's been mentioned. There are other examples you could pick out of really successful towns in Greater Manchester, but we're taking on Stockport. So Stockport is the first town in the country to be subject to a mayoral development corporation. And Stockport Council have developed a truly ambitious blueprint for Town Centre West, or in your minds, the area beneath those famous railway arches. TFGM have put millions into building a new transport interchange there that will be Metrolink ready, so it will be able to bring in the tram in due course. They are building 3,500 homes, many of them zero carbon, age friendly. This has got incredible cycling and walking infrastructure that Chris Boardman's team have designed for it. That is the answer, I think. And I've said at this election that all 9 other boroughs can have a mayoral development corporation focused on developing a blueprint or a master plan for our towns, building those truly affordable, higher density developments that we need to see. And finally, for the first time in our lifetimes, Greater Manchester will be building for public transport rather than building for the car, and breathing new life back into our towns. What's not to like about doing all of that? And Stockport, absolutely, nationally, is leading the way in this. And I'm very proud of Elise Wilson and everything the council has done on that.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed, Andy. Nick, what are you going to do for the town centres?
Well, town centres, high streets have been struggling for decades. And what's great about the Metro Mayor for Greater Manchester is we can look at these individually. We can look at these high streets and these town centres. I agree with everything that's been said before. The way we shop has changed over the last few decades, and it's sped up this last year. We don't need the size of the high streets and the town centres we had a few decades ago. They will reduce, they will shrink. There's a need for them, but it needs to be a modern version of them. I agree with some of these properties need to be converted into apartments and flats and for housing, but most of this will be driven by market forces. As the mayor, we cannot dictate what's going to work in a neighbourhood and what's not going to work in a neighbourhood. That's down to local people, local politicians to work out. If we can create the infrastructure, the transport, make areas friendly, nice to visit, people will come. And what's changed about shopping this last decade is people still shop, people still have money in their pockets, but it needs to be an experience now. It's about shopping and having a drink, shopping, having a meal, shopping with your family and making it a day out. That's what we need to tap in. It needs to be a whole experience now. And if we get this right, we can save our high streets and our towns.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I want to come back to questions in relation to the labour market and skills. And Hannah Goldwyn-Simpkins, are you on the call, Hannah? You've got a question about equality in the labour market. So I'd like you to pose your question if you're on the call.
Yeah, I have absolutely no memory of what I asked.
Excellent.
I'm going to have to ask you to ask it, but
shall I read out your brilliant question, and then you can still the same question? So you said the Independent Inequalities Commission recently published their report on the inequalities in our city and how to create greater equality in future. Do you agree with the recommendations for making the labour market more accessible and improving skills for all? And in particular, what actions are most important to you if you were mayor?
Great question.
Very good. It's a great question, Hannah. Very, very good question indeed. Andy.
Brilliant question, Hannah. And beautifully read, Andrew. Well, I set up the Independent Inequalities Commission with Councillor Brenda Warrington, leader of Tameside, because we believe there needs to be a new focus on inequality coming out of the pandemic. The reality is we've had higher levels of cases than other parts of the country. And within Greater Manchester, certain areas have been particularly stuck with higher levels of cases. And I would put it to this meeting this afternoon that one of the principal reasons for that is the quality of people's work, or should I say the lack of quality in people's work. I think the single biggest explanation for the varying case rate across the country is that in some communities, large numbers of people have never stayed at home because their jobs can't be done from home. And if they have needed to take time out because they've been ill or have been asked to self-isolate, they've been unable to do so because they won't be paid. And I think this explains why Greater Manchester has suffered from a low productivity economy for a long time, because we have not given people jobs that support good productivity, but more than that, a good life, good health. And this is critical for us. So I said before, with Clive and the trade unions and others, developed a Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. I think improving the quality of work in our city region should be a core mission for the next mayor of Greater Manchester. For my part, I've committed to linking the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter to all public procurement in the city region. So it will be much more likely that you will win a public contract if you are accredited as such. And on top of that, we are saying we need a living wage city region where we, take it from a fringe pursuit to saying everyone in our city region should be paid a living wage. And we want to work with businesses to do that, because there's actually a business case for good employment. Businesses will be more successful the better they, in my view, treat their workforce. So Hannah, I would say that there's a lot in the Commission's report that I support, and I've accepted all of their recommendations, but they do point to the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter, and if re-elected, I will be putting a huge amount of emphasis on it, and I will be directly asking every employer in Greater Manchester to sign up to it, because it's doable for everybody and everybody should be doing it, and it will build resilience in people's homes and communities across the city region. And for me, that is the right reflection to make on the back of a year where the poorest communities have suffered and lost the most, and they most need levelling up. And you level up not by building new infrastructure, but making changes to people's jobs, to people's homes, people's living standards. That's what we should be all about.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed. Nick, same question to you.
Yeah. You level up and we overcome poverty through education. This goes back to my points before about our state education system in Greater Manchester. I've spent 2 decades working with young people on the streets across the whole of Greater Manchester. And many of these young people are almost unemployable. Why? Because they've come from our state education system. and we've knocked and sucked any aspiration and dreams out of them. So they're never going to work. They feel society's against them. They always feel they're being done to. These are the people that we need to be concentrating on and raising them up to the level, because we all can level up, and we always pick the easy fruit, the low-hanging fruit, and make their lives slightly better. But we've got a significant proportion of the people in Greater Manchester who the press call the underclass. And they're not the underclass at all. They're the forgotten class. We've just forgotten about them. We've wiped them off, and we've said, let's not worry about them. If we need more skills in Greater Manchester, let's import it. Let's drag it into the region, because it's better than trying to fix our education system and improve the lives of our young people who then can take those jobs. You've got ladders to climb up in careers. That's how we deal with it in Greater Manchester. And if we can deal with that, it also then fixes so many other problems.
Very good.
How we do this is a whole new conversation.
Okay, very good. Simon, so the recommendations were around making the labour market more accessible and improving skills for all. If you become mayor, what actions would you undertake in order to make that a reality?
Well, I just want to make a point. I'm 40 years old. And next year or the year after, I can't remember my dates correctly, the Black Report is 40 years old. And it spoke about access to education, access to good healthcare, access. And we're still having the same debate 40 years on. And I made this point at another hustings. I'm quite naive. You know, I go into a room and everyone gets treated equally by me. They may not like the way I treat them, but they all get treated equally. And we need to get everyone to that point. And that's a social issue. I mean, you've got women that go into interviews, people from ethnic minorities that go into interviews, they're highly qualified. And yet we still see that underlying ism against them that denies them that job. And how do we change minds? We do it through education. We skill up everyone. We make sure that everyone has an acceptance and an understanding of everyone in society. Locally, we can use the Skills and Jobs Fund we have to help lifelong learning and help people that have been left behind, that are appeared to be abandoned in society, to help them reskill themselves, to help support them into higher paying jobs. The green industrial revolution that we want to happen is something that can drive a new dream for Greater Manchester with new jobs and skills.
Very good. Okay. Let's take another question in this sort of space with a particular focus on our younger people, because we know that they've been negatively affected. And it's Rebecca Durba. Rebecca, you're still on the call, I hope. You are. There you are. Thank you for hanging on, Rebecca.
That's fine. Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to ask the candidates how they would ensure that all young people in GM can access training and employment, particularly those that are furthest from the labour market.
Very good question. Let's go to Simon. You kick us off. So this is young people, particularly those that are away from the labour market. What specifically would you be doing for that group?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real pertinent question, actually. I think the unemployment stats that have come out today show that 80% of those losing their jobs in the year to March were under the age of 35. Are they going to be the forgotten generation over the next few years? We need to make sure they're not.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to that skills and jobs budget. It goes back to making sure the transport system is joined up and cheap and effective. It goes to making sure that our health and social care sector works properly so everyone's healthy and can actually do a job if they're employed. It goes back to looking at our environment and making our environments and our town centres and our village centres more accessible and allowing them to adopt new working practices over the next few years. So people can walk down the road to a shared working space or can still work at home, but still work for a company that's based in the city centre of Manchester, for instance. It's everything we've spoken about coming together to make sure that all of those people, those young people, those coming out of school, and those that are losing their jobs now are not left behind over the next few years.
Okay, very good. Michael, what would you be specifically doing to help the younger people that are on the margins of the labour market?
I think it's we've a lot of young people have suffered in the pandemic, and particularly from minority groups in particular. And I think what we can do is we can support them by making it easy and cheap to go and find work. So, for example, at the moment, if you want to get the tram into Manchester at a peak time, it's £7 return. For a one-day ticket. That's if you're actually going in for a low-paying job, and if you're young, your employers are allowed to pay you less. So you've got less money to put towards your transport. So it's fantastic that Andy has put in place the free travel for 16 to 18-year-olds. I think we should be looking at extending that into the 20s. Because that's public transport is the lubricant that allows people to connect with jobs, and then the flexibility in the education system, and also targeted interventions as well. I mean, if there's one thing we've learned from the pandemic, it's how do you get, you've got a particular community that's reluctant to be vaccinated. What do? You don't just kind of put messages up on Facebook or something like that. You've got to get people on the streets to intervene with those communities, to knock on doors, to ask them, and that's what we need. Particularly our local councils need to learn from this whole situation, is that you have to get in there. You have to go and approach the individuals themselves. You can't necessarily expect them to, no matter how much worthy stuff you put out, can't actually expect them to make the move.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Andy. Specific focus and attention on younger people at the margins of the labour market. What would you be doing?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question, Rebecca. I mean, I think we've got to be honest about where we're up to as a city region. If we look at our city centre today, it is nothing like the place that I returned to when I came back from university in the early 90s. There are jobs and opportunities available there that just simply weren't there. However, I think a lot of our young people look at the city centre as something of a foreign land to them, as though it's not for them. Other people come to work in our city centre. So the R-Pass that people have mentioned was meant to send a message to all young people in Greater Manchester that we believe in them, and we're going to help them go from where they are to where they want to go to in life. That is what it was about. It was a replacement really for the education maintenance allowance. And it was meant to say to them, don't put any limit on your ambitions, and actually go and find your future in that city centre. And that's where the GMAC system comes in, the UCAS style system for apprenticeships that we've created. I'm going to be working hard with employers to build up the level of opportunity on that system, not just apprenticeships, but also work shadowing opportunities. Because to answer your question about, and Nick was touching on these young people before, it's often the young people who have whose parents don't have any connections that will find it hardest to get through the door and get into those work experience opportunities. So let's have an open application system for that, so that they get the same access to those opportunities. Just to say something particularly about those who've got the biggest hurdles in front of them, and I just want to just say a couple of quick things about that. We have actually, Michael, extended the R-Pass to the age of 21 for young people who've been in care. So it's something I agreed last year, recognising that there is much more we need to do for young people who can't fall back on parents, particularly at this time. And it's part of a young care leavers guarantee that we're bringing through, which includes priority access to housing, free prescriptions, and other support. Lastly, Rebecca, we have actually launched a pilot with the Prince's Trust, the Future Workforce Fund, which is very focused on precisely the issue that you raised. Young people who've been without employment skills, and they've been working to provide very focused support for young people with some of the biggest challenges, and it's going really, really well. So it's a developing agenda, but I think we can be quite proud, actually, of the strides that we've made on this in the last few years. And Nick rightly posed that question about the forgotten young people, but the RPAS is meant to get over that. You know, this is a city that's going to help bring on every single young person who lives here, and I'm really serious about making this the best place to grow up in the UK.
Okay, very good. And Nick, what would you be doing as mayor to support the young people?
I agree with that's been said, and we do need to help the people who are furthest from job market today. But what we never really talk about and look at is how do we stop tomorrow's young people being those people? Again, it's our education system. It's about developing young people who are full of aspirations, who've got resilience, who've got communication skills. They don't have to be brain surgeons, they don't have to be IT experts. But when you've got young people who can't make eye contact with people, who only spend their time texting and emailing and don't know how to speak to people, that's why they're falling behind. And we're not tackling that. And that needs tackling today with people at primary school and early years and in secondary school. So when they leave school, with or without qualifications, at least they've got dreams, aspirations, confidence, and then they won't be in this position for tomorrow. We need to stop trying to fix problems today and start looking at some prevention and fixing the problem before it is a problem.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Rebecca, for hanging on and posing your question. I want to move to another question on housing, and it's from Joanne Lancaster. Joanne, are you on the call? You're not on the call.
Yes, I am. I am here, Andrew.
Joanne?
Yeah, I'm here. So,
good.
Hi, everybody. Sorry, it just took me a while to get unmuted.
Don't worry, fire away.
So my question is, with regards to kind of future new build housing plans, what would you do to protect our green spaces?
Very good. Let's go to Andy. Housing, green spaces, protecting and providing, what would you do?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's been a very, oops, I just think that's still new there. It's a very big question, Joanne, and obviously it's one that's been highly controversial, if you like, in the city region. So I inherited a Greater Manchester Spatial Framework in 2017 that was building for the car. There's no doubt about it, as far as I was concerned. If you follow the logic of that spatial framework, we would have had decaying town and urban centres surrounded by urban sprawl and our green space, and that wasn't a vision for the future of Greater Manchester that I was prepared to sign up to. So I said I would create a radical rewrite, and we have. So in the latest version, the Greenbelt take is 60% down, lower than it was. And the reason why it can't go further is because of the government housing targets. You know, there's a contradiction actually between what Conservatives say at the national level and the targets they impose on councils and what their local representatives say at council level. There isn't enough brownfield in Greater Manchester to build to the government housing targets. It simply can't be done. So you have to use Greenbelt. There's just no other way to do it. So I completely agree with you that we need to see green space and quality green space as essential for all communities, not desirable. We need to go further where we can to protect it. I've proposed creating a Green Spaces Fund in the manifesto to create grants for communities to use to improve pocket parks and other green space. We are creating the first public park in central Manchester for the first time in 100 years, the Mayfield development. So, you know, these are positive things, but, you know, could I have gone further? Well, within the current government housing targets, no, I've taken this, I've squeezed every little last drop I can out of the process so far, and it's resulted in a 60% reduction in Greenbelt take. It's very difficult to go further without any change in the government targets.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Andy. Nick, so future new housing is undoubtedly needed. What are you going to do to protect and provide green spaces as you provide the new housing? Nick?
I appreciate this is a very touchy subject and difficult to achieve, because no matter what you do upset people either way you take. So I appreciate being mayor on this issue is extremely difficult. We do need new houses, we do need new homes. They don't always have to be new built. We do need to look at brownfield sites, and I'm sure we are, but there's more sites in Greater Manchester. We need to find those sites. I understand that firms do not want to use those sites because it's more expensive to build houses on brownfield. So we need to look at how do we subsidise the building on that? Do we look at waiving council tax on houses built on brownfield sites? We need a proper conversation of looking at how do we create more accommodation. We've already talked about using our high streets and turning those commercial properties into flats and apartments. We need to look at other systems that push us to need more houses, such as we say to single mums on benefits, if you have the father move in with you, you're going to lose out. So therefore the father lives in a home and the mum lives in a different home. There's two houses. So we need to look at every aspect of how we can create more available accommodation in Greater Manchester, because as we know, it's all desperately needed.
Okay, very good. Simon, protecting and enhancing green spaces as we build the homes that the city region needs. What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, I think the Liberal Democrat history on this, as Andy alluded to, we've been against the GMSF since 2016. Jane Brophy, my predecessor, ran saying scrap the GMSF in 2017. And, you know, it's always telling at these events where our Conservative opponent doesn't show up to defend her current campaign because she doesn't mean it. The Conservatives have jumped on this bandwagon over the past year to stir it up. They're happy for their developers to build on green belt. They just don't want the voters to know that. How do we get the houses we need? We are already talking about it. It's repurposing our town centres, repurposing our city centres, but actually changing the way we live. You know, why can't we raise a family in our city centres? Why does it, you know, the moment you have a child, you have to move out to the suburbs? It's that change in culture that won't happen overnight, but it's something that as councils and as Greater Manchester Mayor, we should be trying to guide people towards. And I don't, you know, it's not very British. We haven't had that over the past 30, 40, 50 years. And it would be a major culture change, but they do it all over the world. It's acceptable to live in a city centre and have a school in a city centre and have all those parks and green spaces in city and town centres where families can go and relax. You know, it's not alien to live in a city centre as a family. And I think that's something that we really need to encourage. I mean, on the housing figures, the houses on the Greenbelt were going to be executive houses. These are going to go affordable. For instance, on Timperley Wedge, is going to be £400,000. Now, that's not affordable for me. And I make, you know, I'm comfortable with my partner. That's not an affordable house for me. And so it won't be for many other people. We need to actually get real about social housing, rebuilding those council houses that were sold off, and actually giving people somewhere where they can live in a safe, warm place at low rents, at affordable rents, so they can save for their own house in the future. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Simon. Michael, what are you doing to continue to protect the green spaces whilst also providing the housing that the city region needs?
Well, I think that building on the green belt has to be an absolute last resort. And you know, we obviously have this idea that there's a limited amount of brownfield space, but I think we can look ahead to how the economy is going to be changing over the next few years, and we can identify a lot more areas which could be, you know, regarded as brownfield. They might be being used for something else at the moment, but in 5 or 10 years, they may well not. So let's look at the out-of-town shopping centres. Let's look at the vast amount of space that we give over to car storage, you know, car parking. You know, we create huge amounts of spaces for our cars, but somehow we can't seem to find places for people to live. So if we're being proactive and we're making all these changes that are, to get more people taking active travel, walking and cycling, we have a better public transport system, we have better buses. That means we need less car parking spaces. Let's take some of those those car parks, let's take some of those out of town shopping centres and redevelop them so that we don't have to build on the green belt in the first place.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed. So we're into the closing stages of the hustings, and what we said to each of the candidates that we would give them a sort of 90-second burst at the end to say anything that they haven't said, or to remake their pitch to you all on the call today. So we're gonna do that now. I'm gonna go in reverse order, so just so you're aware. So Michael, then Simon, then Andy, and then Nick. And so you get 90 seconds up to say whatever you want to say. When it gets to 20 seconds, you'll see me waving again, so you'll know you need to come to a close. So you can repeat anything that you've said. Well, actually, you can say whatever you want. I'm not going to say whatever you can say. You can do whatever you want, but you only have 90 seconds to do it. So, Michael, if you're ready to go, I will start the stopwatch, and you have your 90 seconds. Away you go.
Thank you very much. It's been a really wonderful experience being here with the Centre for Cities. I think we can take a lot of positives out of some of the changes that have come from the pandemic, and we need to take that. It's given us some flexibility, some new thinking that we can take forward, and particularly in Manchester city centre. I think we're going to see a lot of changes there now from the city it was. It's already changing with all the tables and chairs that we're seeing out on the streets. We need to, I think Manchester now has a lot of people living in it, and Manchester now needs to develop as a community, in its own right. And I think maybe where the Centre for Cities agenda may be going slightly wrong is they really want, it seems that you want to really recreate that sort of, people going into Manchester to work every day, and we may not be going back there. So we may be going towards 15-minute neighborhoods in our local communities, people working in their local communities, but then coming into Manchester as for their entertainment. So we saw that during the lockdowns as well. Manchester was dead on the weekdays, but at the weekends lots of people were going in to use the entertainments that were available. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much indeed, Michael. I will resist as chair in responding to your comment. That's for another day, but I'm happy to do so as and when it's appropriate. Simon, your 90 seconds as and when.
No, thank you for having me, Centre for Cities. It's been an interesting afternoon. I just reiterate my main 4 points. We need to restore faith in our police. Once we get police right, we'll see our city feeling more together and more happier with itself. We need a health and social care service that's fit for the 21st century, so people can stay healthier and active for longer. We need a transport system that's completely joined up, whether that be from cycling, walking, buses, trams, trains, and yes, for some cars. And we need to get real about housing. Too many people are paying too much in rent to even think about saving for a house of their own. And too many people are living in substandard social housing because they're not being looked after effectively. We need to deal with our town centres and city centres and make sure they're equipped for the next 10 years. And just thank you for having me. Thank you.
Very good. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Okay, Andy, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Thank you, everybody. Actually, really good hour and a half. Some great questions. I've enjoyed it. And just an aside before I get into my final pitch, just to other candidates, a little comment that ripping up a spatial plan, the existing one, doesn't actually protect the greenbelt. It leaves it wide open to speculative development. Just a comment in closing. I would say that this is a crucial period now for our city region. We're the second city, first in many respects. And we've been through a tough year, and it needs real, strong, clear leadership coming out of this. And that's what I've demonstrated over the last 4 years. I was tested, we all were, when I came into office in 2017 with the atrocity at the Manchester Arena, but it is about holding people together. We've not talked about that much in this hour and a half, but you have to be there for everybody. You know, you do have to put place before party, as I've tried to do, and be a trusted mayor by all of the different communities of Greater Manchester. And I've worked hard at that, being somebody that they can all work with. We've brought all voices into Greater Manchester devolution through our race equality panel, our faith panel, women and girls panel, young persons combined authority. This is a developing story. You've got to be prepared to take the difficult decisions, and I have done over Greater Manchester Police, over other things. Stick to your promises. I've donated 15% of my own salary to support our work on homelessness. But I'll finish by saying you need a big vision for this amazing city region of ours. You know, other candidates sometimes do it down. We were called the most exciting and livable big city in the UK by the Sunday Times, no less. You know, this is a fantastic place with so much going for it. The UK's leading digital city region, green city region, zero carbon by 2038, a London-style public transport system to get us there. Okay. It's a vision worth buying into.
All right.
I hope
Thank you, Andy. No, I appreciate that. Nick, your final 90 seconds. Away you go.
Thank you. 3 points from me. First of all, we need to save Greater Manchester Police, who have been put into special measures. Without a decent police service, nothing else is possible in our city region. We need to look at rough sleeping again on the streets of Greater Manchester. It may have come down a little, but it's still a huge problem. And I do not want to live in a city that has fellow citizens living and dying on the streets. And third point, we need a region that makes sure everybody is successful and everybody has the opportunity to be successful. We need to look at the communities and those neighbourhoods where people have been failing for generations, and they're the people we need to lift up.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'd like to thank all the candidates for being with us today. I wish you good luck on the election trail and the many hustings to come. I'm sure you will do loads of them over the next month or so. I'd like to thank Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce and the Institution of Civil Engineers for working with us on the event. Thank you all for coming, and for everybody that posted questions. We had loads of questions, many more than we could get through, but thanks for posting, and those that asked the questions, they were fantastic questions, asked very, very well. As I said, a recording of the event will be available on our website, centreforcities.org, if you want to listen again or double check what our candidates said. And final, I think, just a word from me, which is, please do on May the 6th, get out and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. You make your own decisions, but please get out and vote, and indeed get everybody that you know out to vote. It's so very, very important that that turnout is very, very high. It gives whoever is mayor in the future much more credibility, much more legitimacy to make the arguments on behalf of this area, both to others, but certainly to government. So it's very, very important. So please do get out and vote on May the 6th. But until we see you all again, take care and go well. Thank you very much indeed. All right.